and here we are with Wdg Tv again for another new week. I have with me live Frank Mitchell, who's worked in the construction industry for, I believe, about 20 years, Frank?
No, if only Frank, a bit longer than that, I'm afraid. 35 years, I would say now.
35 years. And I asked this of all my guests, how have you seen the industry change in the last 35 years since your first day on the site?
Much different to what it was when I originally started. In the old days, there was a much more consistent level of workforce, and now it seems that the jobs are much shorter, and there's a bigger requirement, so you say, for casual stroke agency labour.
Right. Okay. So you think it's shifted from, if you like, the traditional company where, you know, you'd have your builder and he'd put an ad in the job centre and all these lads would work for him for sort of 20 or 30 years and that would be their job. You think it's the whole idea of employing people, it's kind of, the psychology has changed from, if you like, hiring people from a job centre and then being your employee to just, you know, picking up the phone and ringing an employment agency?
Well, in my experience, because I've always worked in heavy civils, which has always meant moving around the country, very often the labour squads were tight little units in themselves that were all allied to a particular foreman or ganger.
Right.
And they would pitch up at various sites and they would come as a team. Nowadays it's much more individual and put together and supervised and managed by others as such. Right.
Okay. So what kind of projects do you do? You work in civil, so what type of people do you have usually working with you?
A lot of machine operators and labour guys who do earthworks generally, curb laying, road construction, that kind of thing.
Would you say, in your opinion, if you think about it, would you say that the actual quality of the labour that you have on site, is it any better or is it worse than what it used to be? What's your inner feeling about this?
No, I feel it's better. I mean, just
okay.
the nature of the character industry's changed over the years anyway. Just the level of education that most of the guys have got is far superior to what we used to come across back in say back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And the levels of training that the guys have, of course, that's greatly enhanced on training levels that they ever used to receive in the early days. It was all done on site by working. It was all practical experience. But now, even amongst the agency guys, they've all been trained to a certain standard, which is reassuring.
Yeah. So do you think that's to do with the? I mean, I know from working previously in the agency industry. Do you think that's? I felt that started to sort of change when everyone had to get a CSCS card or a CPCS card.
Yeah, it is a product of legislation without a doubt, and continuous improvement by the companies taking the health and safety aspect of employment more seriously.
Yeah,
I mean, death was not an uncommon thing on the site in the old days, and it wasn't investigated, shall we say, or it didn't have the repercussions that death or injury or even accidents have nowadays. So it's very important for us that guys have got skill levels that prove to all that they're competent to do what we ask them to do.
Yeah. And did you ever come across any horror stories on any sites that you've worked when anything happened where somebody got injured?
Yes, on several occasions I've been on sites where people have been injured, and nowadays the repercussions of that are really quite serious.
Right. Yeah.
Investigation can have a serious impact on a company.
Okay.
And the repercussions for companies tendering for future works, the impact of their health and safety track record is vital.
Yeah. I mean, how would you, in your honest opinion, how would you compare a cards in lad to an agency worker? How would you compare the two, if you can?
It's not easy to compare the two. I mean, in the end of the day, they're both individuals, regardless of whether they're agency or on the books. The only thing may be, or certainly is the case with an agency guy, we don't really know what we've got till he's arrived.
Yeah.
how to put them to work in a safe and satisfactory
And
manner.
what about
Agency guy?
What about reliability? Sorry. What about reliability?
Reliability. Obviously reliability is key. With our own people, if they're not reliable, they're not with us.
Yeah.
Again, with agency people, you don't really know who you're going to get.
Right. So if you like, it's a roll of a dice. You pick up the telephone, you tell the agency what you want, and you just keep your fingers crossed, and you hope you get the man that you're actually looking for.
Yeah, basically that's it. That's basically it. It is difficult really to describe to the agency who's doing the recruiting exactly what we're looking for. In some cases, the guys who operate for the agencies are not that familiar with the construction processes in themselves.
Yeah, that's true, and I'm a strong believer that the contractor he should always have the ability to decide who he has working on that building site. I personally think.
Yeah,
I think when you. Sorry, go on.
Sorry. So I was going to say, unless we've got some level of competence proof before they actually arrive nowadays, they wouldn't get as far as an induction or on the site.
Yeah. I agree. I think when you put a third party into the mix, it's another bunch of errors that could exist because you're putting your faith in somebody else. So.
And very often we don't actually get, or we ask it. Often the problem is, it has to be said, Carl, the notice we perhaps sometimes give to fill positions can be quite short. And it can be quite difficult for the agency to actually acquire the documentation from whoever they're going to send to us. Prior to that chap arriving. So, but it has been occasions where the guys haven't turned up the proper CSCS card.
What we do with the Wdg employment app, when you're actually looking for somebody, you'll put in the site address, the postcode. You'll actually put the rate of pay that you want that particular worker to be paid. So you know for a fact, you know how much he's going to get. We charge 9% over the worker's wage, but you know that the guy's not going to get ripped off. We also, with all of our workers, we do not charge the umbrella company they go through. There's no umbrella company fee. So when they start working, there's no fee, no £20 a week that they have to pay the umbrella company. When they come through WDG, they get that as part of a free service. So that's that. I remember working when I was working in recruitment. The biggest thing was they didn't want to work with an umbrella company because they always seemed to have the feeling they were getting ripped off. You had people that would accept it. And then you'd have people that were really pissed off because the umbrella company wants to take 25 quid off them and they don't see why they should have to pay it. So with us,
they don't really understand the arrangements that they engage with these people. I very often find I do get complaints about umbrella companies. And hidden charge from the guys who come through as fire agencies, and it's a lack of understanding on their own part actually what kind of employment conditions they're working under.
Yeah, and what we also do is when you're looking at profiles, the way we work in real time. So as you mentioned, if you need somebody urgently, you fill out the vacancy, you press send. In real time, it'll go to the temp. The temp will then respond. He'll give you a brief breakdown. Won't know who you are as a contractor, but a brief breakdown of what the money is, what the length of the contract is. He'll press, yes, I'm available for work. And then when you look at the profile of that particular temp, you'll see a photograph of him, who he's worked for. You actually see a copy of their tickets. So you'll see the CSCS card, any machine driver tickets, identification, and you'll see their work history, everything. And on top of that, we also give the worker a worker reliability score. So this is rated weekly on productivity and timekeeping. So as they do a good job, you can rate them, and that will increase their hourly rate and make their profile, if you like, top of the list. So it's a real incentive for the worker, because instead of like working for a building through an agency, you work on the job, you go to the next job. Nobody really knows if you're any good, and it's just by the grace of God that the agency might pick you up and speak to you again. So it's what we do is we cut out all of that effort, so it makes things easier. You know how much the worker's getting paid and so on. So that's the problems that I've seen, and that's what we've targeted with the app. How do you feel about Brexit? How do you feel about Brexit?
Brexit?
Yeah.
It is really difficult, and nobody really knows what the impact of Brexit is going to be. Is it going to have an impact on the quality of labour? Short term, of course, definitely, and it probably already is now.
Absolutely, yeah.
Everybody knows there's not the availability of foreign labour around that there was, say, a year or so ago.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
Long term, I think it's not a bad thing from the point of view. It'll just put more emphasis on the actual companies to train the workforce and employ people themselves.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Long term.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember the old YTS schemes when people you came out of school and they would put you on an apprenticeship, and you just jump into an apprenticeship. You get your YTS, and then you'd go off and basically finish your trade with it. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think Frank, you've hit the nail on the head when you say it will drive the prices up, because if you have 100 building sites and those building sites require 100 workers, but there's only 90 available, it drives the price up. It's inevitable. If that labour is not, sorry, go on.
No, it's got to, and that's one of the arguments for Brexit really, is that foreign labour was actually holding the prices down.
It just, I think it will drive up, obviously, the prices that the workers get per hour, and it will also at the same time drive up the costs of what the contractors are charging for their projects. It's going to be a complete knock-on effect, I think. It's certainly, like you say, it will. I think there'll be a transition period of perhaps a year or 2 years, and things will start to level out a little bit. But I imagine there will be a panic. Just to jump back to the app again, the cool thing about the app is the fact that the app will follow the market trends. To use the WDG employment app to search for your labour is a free service. So if you throw out a price there, X amount for a tradesman, a ground worker, if nobody responds, you know instantly I'm going to have to increase the pay rate. So I'm going to get, and you basically you get it to a level, and it's totally free to do that. And this can be done in seconds. So instead of speaking to an agency and saying, well, how much it is, an agency will always go for the higher level price, charge rate that they can get away with, and pay the worker the lesser rate, because they don't want to keep coming back on the telephone to you and saying, hey, Frank, we can't find anybody at this price. Shall we do it at this price? So as a company, you're going to lose money there somewhere. I mean, because there's too much communication going back, and the agency is obviously wanting to make that margin all the time. So they're always going to be charging a little bit more rather than a little bit less, because if they charge less, they're going to get back on the phone to you and say, hey, we've got to do this. And I think that might be a problem that's coming about in the future, Yeah,
perhaps. But long term, I don't think Brexit's about it.
Yeah, and what about? I mean, we did sort of skirt on health and safety. What about health and safety? Do you I've heard stories of workers not having real CSCS cards. Have you ever come across this, like fake cards?
No, I must admit I haven't actually.
Yeah. When I was in recruitment, I came across a few instances like that where it would be, that would be happening. But that's good that people are being more square about that. So when you're looking to hire an employee, what are the main qualities that you look for? If you've got somebody sitting in front of you, Frank, and you're interviewing them, what is it that you look for? What helps you decide what you're looking for? And this is going to help the workers when they're actually creating their profiles on the app. What is it that you look for? What are the qualities that you, as a contracts manager, look for?
Well, competence, really, and experience, and the right attitude towards health and safety. Right.
Okay. And if you're just looking at, would it be the just what you work? So if you work with machine drivers, you work with the ground workers, you work with the labourers. Do you find any different when you're communicating with these lads? Do they have a different edge to things? I mean, how do you feel when you interview these lads to work for you? What kind of, do you think the timekeeper is obviously essential? Obviously, do you find that they have the right work boots and the right work equipment, or is this something that you feel that you have to provide to the workers?
we would provide PPE to our guys. You know, sometimes PPE might be a bit more specialist on some sites rather than others. So, no, that's not an issue with us, really. PPE is something we always provide.
Great, absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, just to ask you a question, Frank, what do you think of, I mean, I know that we had a few conversations about the app, and I know you know it's out there. What's your thoughts about the app, the WDG improvement?
It sounds like a good idea. It really does. I mean, if it can cut out the middleman and avoid that, essentially, a breakdown in communication between what's actually required and what's been promised by the agency to the operative. Well, if we cut that out, well, why not? You know?
Absolutely, yeah, totally. So...
I think keep it always a positive thing.
Yeah, and do you like the idea that the fact that you know how much the worker's getting paid per hour?
Yes, but we do it anyway. One thing I always make a point of actually is if we've engaged agency labourers, then I ask them how much they're getting paid.
Okay, so yeah, that's great, yeah. And what do you think about the worker reliability score?
Yeah, that can only be a good thing. You would hope it wouldn't be abused by people for
absolutely,
reason,
yeah, definitely.
People can look like.
Yeah.
So you'd have to take it with a bit of a pinch of salt, it has to be said. But having some form of feedback from other contractors about that particular individual would be good, especially because offer forward a reference.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, simply if they do a good job on the contract, you rate them, and as I mentioned earlier, that score does increase. So that's really, on the next job, instead of having half a star, they've got 4 stars. So if you were looking at this example, say you're looking at profiles and you've got half a star, 4 stars, 5 stars, you're going to pick the 5-star guy, I would assume.
You probably would pick, you would certainly contact the 4 and 5-star guys prior to the other guys, but as I said, Cal, you have to take some of these scores and reading things.
Absolutely. And what's got to be understood is it's got to be fair. It can't be abused in any way.
Well, that's it. I can imagine where some guys actually will turn up to the site and look around and say, wait a minute, I'm not working here.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree.
They'd better get a false score with probably a good judgment of not getting involved in a situation they don't want to be involved with.
That's right, yeah. And that's all we want to do with the WDG employment app is we want to help you, the contractor, to be able to pick the right worker at the right price. We want the worker to stop paying umbrella company fees, and we want that worker to be appreciated for the work that he does by being able to build a work reliability score, helping the average labourer who kind of gets ignored on the sites because they're just the labourer be able to build something as if they're like a company, if you like. So when he goes on to the next job, the contractor's like, yeah, this guy's worked, he's built his score up, I feel a lot more confident with this individual. Right now, that simply doesn't exist. You do a really good job on a contract, or a really good contract with a contractor, and then you walk off, nobody's ever going to know anything about it. It's just, like I said, it always comes down to the agency will actually hire the individual who would be prepared to work for less in most cases, because they do think a lot about margin.
Yeah, I can see that. So, no, if it empowers the operatives to be able to present themselves in a better manner, and it's quicker for us, then I wouldn't see why we wouldn't get involved in such a thing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Frank, for joining us on the WDG TV. I mean, I'm sure the audience will find your comments useful and helpful, and I hope that you've learned something from what Frank said. We will have another show next week. If you'd like to subscribe, please subscribe here. If you'd like to appear on the show, please write to our email here. Thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.